Hello, everyone. Happy 2025. Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to share this little snippet of the four-part series. It's such an honor to be here with Culturati. I'm so happy to be part of this group and this place in which we get to share knowledge and wisdom with each other in so many ways. So hopefully I get to meet you all in person in April. And with that, let's dive on in. Definitely have something to write with. If you have, I am obsessed with mechanical pencils. So grab a pen, grab something to write with, notebook, piece of paper. That would be really helpful. I also took a screenshot of the poll and really excited about that as well. And to talk more about that, somehow I seem to have lost that poll. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. So 40% of you actually said resolving disagreements. So this is fantastic. Let's go ahead and dive on in. So for those of you who don't know me, Rajkumari Neogy, these are just a few of the companies that I've had a chance to partner with along the way. Missy did a great job of sharing so many of those names, but the reality is this is actually who I am. So this is me with my dad here on the lower right, and then me with my mom here on the left-hand side. Dad's family is from India, mom's family is from France. Dad was actually born in Kampala, Uganda, and mom was actually born in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And then these are my grandparents. So the black and white photos are of me in India with my grandparents, and then not indicative of my amazing French Canadian grandmother. Just was the only photo I seem to have with her face facing the camera. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I start every single presentation with this slide, Black Lives Matter. It's a very important movement to me personally. And oh no, I'm not sharing my screen. Thank you. My goodness. It is 2025. How are we not figuring, how am I not figuring this out already? Oh my God. Gee whiz. Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay, fantastico. So appreciative. Share the family. Okay. Y'all are adorable. Okay, so let me go back a little bit. So here's dad, here's mom, and then here are my grandparents. So that was very sweet of you all to request that. Thank you. Okay, great. So please make sure you have something to write with. In just a moment, we'll take some time to kind of lay some foundation and then we'll get to doing some reflection. So all of my courses are really focused on self-reflective states so that we can start to understand a broader sense of what's happening across the team and across the business. Okay, so conflict. Inevitably, it arises. And the way in which we navigate that conflict directly impacts the business. If you haven't read The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni, I highly recommend that. And it definitely impacts the business, but it also affects the health of the organization and the health of the employee. And that means you. So let's talk a little bit more about why that is. So we have neural circuits responsible for our ability to control ourselves and to regulate ourselves all the time. But the really interesting thing about these neural circuits is that they are highly vulnerable to the mildest of stresses. And when they get activated, when they get triggered, they start to shut down. They go into these primal impulses that render us into mental paralysis, rigidity, or we become actually really dogmatic for whatever reason. And the most important thing to understand about this is that our ability to make high quality decisions during high stress moments goes out the window. And our brains stop working, or they work in starts and stops, spurts and fits kind of a thing. So imagine you're in a situation where you're in conversation with someone at work. So maybe earlier this morning or last week or before the holidays, whatever that was. And the first thing you start to notice is, there's some tension here. Something doesn't feel quite right. And then all of a sudden you notice that they're saying something that feels pretty activating, right? And your nervous system starts to have this experience that because there's tension, there's a starting to lose a sense of control. And when they actually say something that is offensive, feels like an affront of some sort, or they interrupted you, or they were dismissive of whatever you shared, then your nervous system kind of takes over and goes, uh-oh, something's not right here, and feelings start to emerge, and the nervous system is trying to regain a sense of control, and so then you might respond in a way that may not be the best in whatever capacity that is for you. Maybe it's even pulling back, maybe it's actually not sharing the actual thing that you would like to say. And so our nervous system moves into a state of control first because what it's trying to do is actually find relief. And our nervous system does this in one of four ways. It moves into, I'm sure you've heard of this, the fight, flight, freeze response or the fawn response. And what that looks like for each of these different states is that in a fight mode, we might notice the person becoming intimidating or demanding of some sort, or their voices are getting raised. In a flight stance, what we might notice is there might be a panic or an anxiety element that's there. Maybe there's an overworking that they're always online. In a freeze state, what you might notice about the person is that there's stonewalling of some sort, that they're not sharing resources or information. Maybe they're being kind of not forthcoming in revealing what the project issues are at hand. And in a fawn state, what you might start to notice is the person is over accommodating. Everything's okay, even in high stakes situations. All of these are because our nervous system is looking for relief. So it's not about trying to um, be in a certain way that is a leadership trait that is not effective. It's really our nervous systems taking over. And all of these are our nervous system's attempts to regain control of the situation. But the problem with this is that it prevents collaboration and it inhibits communication. Okay, let's take a deep breath here. So the question is it possible to start to view conflict as an opportunity to connect? What if we began to view conflict as a bridge that helps to strengthen our connection with our coworkers? And the truth is, we absolutely can. The course, the four series modules that I dive into with folks is really looking at something that I think most leadership courses around conflict resolution don't address. And it's this learning to sit with our own sense of discomfort. That allows us to expand our resilience, increase our flexibility. And so much of our abilities to sit in these volatile, complex, ambiguous, and uncertain times is really about growing our capacity to sit in discomfort. Whether it goes from 4 seconds to 6 seconds, whether it's an entire conversation that's 20 minutes long, whether it's giving feedback that's really difficult for the other person to hear, whatever that is, your ability to sit in those moments that are really uncomfortable is going to be the number one leadership trait moving into the rest of this year and forward. 100%. And being able to interrupt the cycle of these fight, flight, freeze, and fawn states requires us to foster connection. That's the fifth F. But fostering connection starts with ourselves. It's just like being on the airplane. It's just like putting our own oxygen mask on first. We've got to do it with ourselves first. And then we have the resources, we have the capability to do it with others next. And so today we're going to spend a lot of time really looking at what happens with you in a moment of conflict. We're going to kind of tease apart your experience and really start to see what's happening internally for you, your internal landscape. There's some really interesting work with Matthew Lieberman, who's this neuroscientist. He used to be at UCLA. And he went around campus and he was asking people during his experiment, hey, did you know that if you actually put your feelings and emotions into words, it would actually help you calm down? People would say no. And then he actually asked the second question, which I thought was hilarious. He said, well, now that you know that, will you do it? And most people said no. So not quite sure what that's about, but it's called affective labeling. And what this does is it sends a signal from the prefrontal cortex back to our amygdala, the emotional seat in our brain, and it starts to calm ourselves down. So we're going to do a little bit of that today in a different way, because we're going to talk a lot about today what we can do after the conflict arises. So being able to name our feelings, being able to put our emotions into words helps to calm ourselves down, but being able to do it with others also helps them as well. But what happens when the conversation's over and that person isn't there anymore and you walk away and you notice that you still don't feel great, that you still have a lot of activation that is alive for you? People often think that, okay, now the conversation's over, it's done, move on. But the thing with that is that that might be true, that the conversation is over, but the conversation itself is actually just the middle step of the whole arc of conflict. The most important work and the most important part of the learning of that conflict and even healing happens in the reflection states after the conflict. And that's when the integration starts to really happen for you. Tending to our nervous systems post-conflict is absolutely critical. And even though the conversation is over, you're not in the midst of like navigating that uncomfortable discussion, and there's relief from not being in that scenario anymore. Your nervous system has a very different idea. It most likely has not yet caught up with you. It might even be 2 or 3 days, and you might even notice that you are still ruminating about what happened in that meeting or in that conversation or during that offsite. And what that tells you is that there's still some activation present. So being able to address that, being able to tend to that is absolutely critical, because if you keep ruminating about it, if you keep recalling that stressful memory, it's absolutely impacting your own physiological responses. So what I want to do now is just take a moment and have you think about a conflict that occurred recently for you. I know we're on a Monday here, and many of us are starting our week, and we've been on holiday. I just got back from a business trip on Saturday. So my week is just starting today. In fact, my year is just really starting today. But think about what may have happened over the holidays, maybe even with a loved one or a family member or a friend. And go ahead and maybe jot some things down that feels alive for you. Are you still recalling something they said? Are you still thinking about what happened, how they behaved? So go ahead and take a moment. We'll set the timer for about 60 seconds. Just give yourself an opportunity to think through what memory or conflict recently that occurred for you is alive for you. And then just jot a few things down if you need to, and because we're going to use that moving forward. So, in this conflict, what are you noticing in your body? What are you noticing where tension may exist? Where discomfort might be for you? Are you having some tightness in the chest? Is there maybe a pain that's kind of crept up in your shoulder area? Maybe you're noticing that there's fidgeting in your legs, or maybe you're moving your feet, or there's a pain in your knee, right? So what are you noticing that's coming up for you is you recall this memory. And if you want to just take a few moments now and really kind of get into the details of this, this is going to really help us as we move into an activity in just a moment here. Make sure you're breathing as you do this. So I'm going to put the timer on. Writing down sentences that you remember, behavior, your own body experiences, maybe how that's different now than it was then, how you felt. Did someone come up to you and try to offer you support? Okay, make sure you're breathing, please. Okay, so everyone come on back. Just go ahead and wrap up that last sentence. This is René Descartes, and he is famous for saying this: I think, therefore I am. And we tend to really live in our heads. We tend to really focus on our thinking selves. But our bodies play such a huge role in how we go about our day to day that we don't even pay attention most of the time. But our bodies are really communicating to us, especially in the moments of conflict. This is the author of The Politics of Trauma, Stacey Haynes. And in fact, I was just on a retreat with her this last week. It was pretty incredible to be in her space and to hear things that she had to say. And this is a direct quote from one of our conversations that we had last year. Our thinking self is not making decisions for us. Going from a thinking self housed in some package that I'm trying to take care of to this is one whole organism, our bodies, that has an intelligence in its wholeness, I think is so, so important. Bringing our bodies back to glean information about what's happening for us in conflict is so critical, so essential. Stacy works in the field of somatics, which is about body work and movement studies that focuses on our own sensations, our own perceptions, and our own experiences. And in a moment here, we're going to do an activity, and I'm going to show you how important it is to really help to deconstruct our experience of conflict and use our bodies to help navigate us. So I want to just take a moment before we do the activity and watch a 1-minute video of what Stacy has to say. And just I'm going to hit the play button here. If you can't hear the audio, let me know, please.
What I love about somatics is, there's this yearning. People yearn for wholeness. People yearn for being connected. People yearn for feeling like they belong someplace. None of that is possible without actually also returning to ourselves and returning to our bodies. It remains a good idea or a concept. What's potent about somatics or embodied transformation is it's highly pragmatic, and then it connects us back into some of the most meaningful things in our lives. And then learning new practices that so often either trauma or our social conditions, right, our families, or the social norms and rules we learned to live by didn't teach us. We can relearn boundaries. We can relearn holding complexity. We can relearn navigating contradictions because that's part of what human life is. We can actually learn and deepen our capacity to love and be loved.
I think what is really important to understand that Stacy and I talked about at length is that sometimes our bodies actually survive really difficult moments, especially in times of childhood, by not moving, by being still. And so being able to relearn the safety in movement is essential. And relearning our boundaries is about being connected back to ourselves, being connected back to our bodies, being able to say no and being able to delegate and not take on project after project after project is about being connected to our bodies and growing our capacity for discomfort, growing our capacity for being able to navigate conflict that is so uncomfortable. And it happens all the time, day after day after day, even with people that we truly enjoy and feel safe with. Is about understanding what's happening in our bodies. And being able to build that muscle memory requires practice and it requires patience. Repetition, as we all know, is the mother of all learning. And so, ways in which we can start to figure out how to soothe our nervous system after the conflict has occurred is what helps us grow through conflict and allows us to actually heal past conflict. Because the actual growth and the learning doesn't happen while we're in the midst of an activated state. Our nervous system is too busy surviving that conflict. So, taking the time to really understand how to support you in the moments that you've had a difficult one-on-ones with someone or that you're having to hold a team through reorgs or layoffs is so important for your own mental health. It is critical. And when we are in the heat of the moment, it is really essential that we are not trying to self-soothe to get rid of our feelings, to move away for the discomfort. This activity is really about increasing our capacity to sit with them. When we look at Gallup, when we look at Deloitte, when we look at McKinsey, when we look at Ernst Young, so much of the data shows that, first of all, toxic workplace behavior is through the roof. And what works with people in terms of their hunger in the workplace, in terms of them needing connection, is the tools and the skills as a leader to be able to use language in order to have them have the experience of being heard, being seen, being valued, being appreciated. And so that goes hand in hand with the ability to increase our capacity to sit with discomfort. Because giving someone difficult feedback is really difficult. Doing hard things is hard, but it doesn't actually mean you're bad at it. It just means it's difficult. And so being able to increase our capacity to sit with discomfort, do hard things while soothing our own nervous system, that's the mastery that we need moving into 2025. Having connection to our feelings while also having that perspective allows us to really understand others better. And then we can apply it, having gleaned from that learning, into future conflicts in the moment, and we'll be better able to quickly navigate, quickly address, quickly pivot and go, oh, okay, there's discomfort here. I can sit with this. I can be with this person. One of the reasons that we journal a lot through the series is one, it allows you to reflect. But the more important thing is it takes both of the hemispheres and starts to integrate that understanding and that learning for you to actually embody it so that it kind of embeds into your cellular biology so that the next time that you find yourself in conflict, you'll be able to load those learnings up super quickly and then be able to navigate that conflict and discomfort with greater mastery. So that's what the series is about, and that we're going to actually do a little bit of that today. So different people integrate conflict differently. Different people have different ways of understanding different parts of themselves and need different types of wisdom. And so this creates our core self and being able to understand what the parts of us are that make up our core self is so essential because different parts of our bodies hold different perspectives and emotions. So I'm going to give you an example that actually happened to me. So we're going to use this diagram and we're going to be drawing this in a moment, but let me just walk you through an example that happened to me right before the end of the year. So I live in an apartment complex. I'm the middle unit. There are just 3 units, and the upstairs people were moving, and I was leaving on the day that they were moving. There was construction happening outside on the street. It was expletive, expletive, expletive. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And so we were trying to navigate parking with the moving truck and me leaving and getting a rental car. It was very complicated. And it turned out that my friend who lives downstairs um, was trying to work with the people upstairs who were moving out to get me to move into his parking space. And there was a lot of miscommunication, unfortunately. So it didn't work out. But what ended up happening is that the people upstairs, through miscommunication with my friend downstairs, got very angry with me and hyper criticized me via text while I was driving away. I was already 30 minutes away and I could not come back and support them in their needs. And so a lot of stuff happened for me. It was a very uncomfortable experience and it lasted several hours, including while I was driving to take care of a friend who was in a wheelchair who I had to take to the hospital. It was such an experience. So different parts of me showed up during this conflict. The first part that showed up was the terrified part. And that terrified part occurred when that upstairs neighbor was really, really critical and really, really rude to me via text. And so this terrified part of me that kind of came forward was like, see, you always try to help people, you always try to be nice, and no matter what, people are rude to you, they're mean, and they're still unkind. It's a younger part of me for sure, but it came rushing forward because I was really trying to navigate my intense schedule of getting a rental car and leaving to drive an hour and a half to really making sure that they had an easy time with the moving truck. And what started happening throughout this conflict was I started feeling dread. Like these people were really, really unkind. And then I got a text from her. And this other part came rushing forward and they're like, you know what? They cannot treat us like that. That is not okay. And so when I had arrived at my destination, I was really angry. And there was a part of me like, what if I drive back tonight and block the moving truck? I mean, that was true. I did think that. And then immediately when I was thinking that, my neck started to really tense up and I wanted to just yell. I was so, so angry. And as I was having this part of the rebel part, I had this pro-social part, this part that wanted like everyone to be happy, everyone to be like singing kumbaya and holding hands. And this part was completely antithetical, like, up against polarizing with the rebel part who wanted to burn everything down for them, right? So I had this really kind part was like, they're there. We never want to hurt people. We always want to be kind and, take the high road kind of a thing. And I would even get into this place of, huh, so interesting that I'm building this course for people or I'm delivering this course for people. And what a perfect opportunity to have this conflict be in the class. So that was happening with this pro-social part, the pro-social meaning the one that wanted everyone to get along. By the time the day had ended, I was exhausted, having gotten the rental car, having driven, having helped my friend at the hospital. I was just done. And by the time I was in my bed, I was now in a place of despair because I was still thinking about this conflict. I was still really hurt about it. And then there was this part that said, you know what? I just want to get under the covers. I just want to watch Netflix for the rest of the evening. I am done. And by the next day, when I woke up, I was still thinking about it. I didn't sleep well, actually. Now I was having stomach issues. I had had actually some dreams about it, nightmares about it. It was so weird. And when I woke up, I had anxiety. Like I was stressed about the landlord finding out. I had actually talked to the landlord and she was amazing. She was like, "Oh, don't worry, we have cameras if they try to retaliate so I can see if they take, impact your car." I mean, it was an intense experience, but I felt bad about the whole thing. And my physiological responses were to show up as stomach issues, digestive issues, anxiety. And then I had the part by the end of day 2, which was like, why didn't I just do everything this upstairs tenant wanted me to do? I could have just sacrificed my whole thing, not gotten my friend to the hospital on time, and I wouldn't have to be dealing with this. I'd probably be dealing with something else with my friend, right? But all of these different parts came forward to tell me about what was happening with this conflict. And that fawning part actually felt completely hopeless and powerless, right? And just wanted to make the entire situation go away. But here is what was happening with my internal landscape. So much. I had a terrified part that was in dread mode. I had a fawning part that felt hopeless and powerless. I had a rebel part that was like, we will take them down. I had stomach issues. I had a despairing part. And I had a pro social part that was like, let's take this learning into our class, right? So all of these different parts were alive with me at the same time or throughout the course of 2 days. And when we don't take the time to really sit with that level of discomfort and attune to the parts that really need us, then we can find ourselves either ruminating or perseverating or really starting to kind of get hard on ourselves or really, really take it out on those around us. And so being able to really kind of journal or reflect at this level will serve you in the long run and your nervous system as well as your mental health and well-being. So, you've already thought of a conflict. If you haven't thought of a conflict in the earlier part of the presentation, go ahead and do that now. And what I would love for you to, is to take about 5 minutes or so and go ahead and draw the different parts of you for that conflict. And you can, I'm going to put the uh, the map back up here on the screen, and you can use that and see if you can get into the parts of you that had a headache, the parts of you that felt anxious, the parts of you that felt really uncomfortable or unwelcome, the parts of you that felt really sad, the part of you that felt really frustrated that you've had this conversation before. Whatever parts feel alive for you, take the time to really kind of locate them within you. Maybe there's only 2 or 3 parts, maybe you have 5 parts, whatever that is. Just go ahead and take the time to do that now. And if you have questions, you can privately message me through the chat window, and I'm happy to answer them, and I will respond anonymously, as well. So would love to have you do this, and we'll set the timer here for about 4 minutes now. So go ahead and do that. And just this one comes up for you. As you're doing this activity, make sure that you're breathing, please. About 90 more seconds, and then I'll have you do one more thing, and then we'll move into a Q&A. Okay. Go ahead and wrap up that last sentence, last few thoughts. And then the last thing that I'd love for you to do is to pick one of the parts that you worked on and just focus on one of them. What does that part need from you? Because that part's still pretty, might be still pretty activated, or there might be some residue of activation there if it's coming into the map. Does that part need to have a conversation with you? Maybe just let you know how it's feeling? Does that part need you to go for a walk? Does that part of you need to call a friend and talk through it? Does that part of you need to meditate? Would that part of you enjoy going to the gym? What does that part need from you? So just take a few moments and see if you can come up with what that part might need from you. And with that, I'm ready to open up the floor and hear some questions or comments, any thoughts that felt alive for you. And I'm going to actually uh, stop sharing my screen so you can see me full screen. We have a Q&A here. Which practice are you most interested in implementing after the session? Resilience building techniques, aftercare routines for recovery, strategies for complex environments, or all of the above? I love that. Any thoughts, any questions? Anyone like to share what their experience was like? Thank you, Gail. You are very welcome. That was certainly an uncomfortable experience. No questions, folks? No thoughts? Strategies for complex environments. Yeah, absolutely. When we do the series in module 3, what we offer is a way to work with language with the other person. So depending upon if that person is in fight mode or flight mode or freeze mode or fawn mode, different languaging will help to bring that nervous system back online. So we cover that in detail. And we actually do some role playing on how to create resonance by using language to get their nervous system back online. What happens when conflict is with family members? Any special tips as blood connections don't go away? Yeah, I mean, it depends on what specifically, I mean, there's different kinds of conflict, right? So is it conflict that is aggressive or in that fight mode, or is it conflict where the person stops talking to you, or is it conflict where the person you can see is visibly over accommodating and is just trying to like make things nice. What type of conflict are you thinking? Ultimately, all conflict is about not getting one's needs met. That's the definition of conflict. And so being able to have a sense of mastery around being able to name those unmet needs for that person requires vulnerability for sure. And it requires a sense of generosity that even though your own needs are not being met in the moment, the mastery skill set is really about being able to name what's missing for them in order to have them come forward. And many people don't have the capacity to do that. So sometimes when one is able to do that, then there's a longing, like, hey, what about me? I also want to be seen for what wasn't being met for me, right? And that can be really challenging. That's why it's really important in the workplace to have classes and courses where those skill sets get practiced and then kind of can ripple out across the organization so that teams can come together and be able to have kind of a baseline capacity to be able to meet people where they are. So much of what Amy Edmondson talks about with psychological safety is that feeling that we can take a risk and kind of share what's going on. But if people don't have the capacities, that same baseline capacities, then it's really hard to do that. Oh, you did share. Oh, thank you, thank you. Whoops. Let's see if I can open this up a little bit here. My granddaughter who was out of line, I thought so, but my daughter told me to apologize her. Um, do apologies help? They do. Apologies do help when it's sincere. Absolutely. I think it's important to really be able to, before the apology, offer their perspective of what might be going on for them. And then for you to also name your boundary or name that line that was crossed and what was really difficult with you. If you want, I'm happy to put some time on the calendar, maybe 20 minutes, and we can talk through the situation to give you exactly the languaging and the skill set to kind of go back to your granddaughter and talk about that. So much of what I do with executives is kind of help frame the perspectives of the conflict for all parties involved, and then coach that executive on what to say, how to say it, and to really understand where that person might be coming from and how to work with them in order to get your needs met. And often your needs met is not just around collaboration or respect or reliability, but it is about getting a project done, right? And how to work with that person so that it's as most effective as possible. So let me know if you want, and you can just reach out to me on LinkedIn. Um, okay, let me see if I can scroll up a little bit here to read the next thing. What happens when I am an observer of conflict? Friend was racially discriminated against at work and it's gone unresolved. It feels like it sits in my body. Same. Yeah, I did write an essay. Oh, that's beautiful. That is so hard. And I'm so touched that you're sharing this so vulnerably in front of the group. Thank you, Shirley. I think being seen for the difficulty, acknowledging the pain is so essential. Being able to do it for your friend. I think if the workplace is not going to be able to address it, which is often the case in the ways that we need and want, then being able to go with your friend and do that for them, I think is critical. But being able to do it for you is critical too. I mean, work with so many different executives, and there is so much hurt and discrimination and residue around exclusion that I'm having these conversations all day long. And so I have to contend with my own discomfort of living in a world that is not fully inclusive yet, that really still struggles to create belonging and safety for everyone across the globe. So I have to take time for me. I have to take time to really unpack my own experience. And the ways in which I do that is to really acknowledge what's difficult and to really also name the things that I don't get to have for the world and for my clients. Like, I don't get to have, I really want a just world. I really want a world that's kind. I really want a world where people come together with curiosity and compassion and care. Like that, those are really, really important to me. But to name them and to name them out loud is really helpful for me to calm my nervous system down. And it also gives me this opportunity to grieve. And I don't get to have that yet in the ways that I would like. So naming it, again, we go back to that Matthew Lieberman and affective labeling. Being able to name things for yourself is so critical. That's the way that you regulate your own nervous system. And then taking that skill set to your friends or colleagues or coworkers who are also in challenging experiences and being able to name them. One of the things that I do when I do the Biology of Belonging boot camp is we watch a scene from Inside Out. And it's a 2.5 minute scene, and I kind of break it down for folks, excuse me, and show how when there's someone who's just trying to fix the problem, that we don't get to be seen in having that and acknowledged for things not going our way, things not being easy or welcoming or safe. And in that scene, there's another character that comes forward and really acknowledges the pain for the character that's having a difficult time, and the whole scene changes. So please know that being able to acknowledge our own internal state does wonders on our mental health, does wonders on our own biology, and really helps to get our nervous systems back online. Okay, let's see what else is happening here. Oh, I would love to you can share the essay with me via LinkedIn. I'd love to read it. That would be incredible. Um, okay, what happens when oh, I already read that one. Okay, great. Let's see here. Nicely noticed, Celeste, about the freeze mode with your husband. Nicely noticed with the connection of the physiological response. That's beautiful. Yeah, well, that I think that makes a lot of sense about the defensiveness and the helplessness and the powerlessness. That part is most likely a younger part of you, and the opportunity is then to connect back to that part. So much of what we do in level 2 of the Biology of Belonging boot camp is rewiring the right hemisphere through visualizations, and so much of the rewiring of through visualizations for the right hemisphere allows us to really work with those parts that are defensive, those parts that are helpless, are powerless, and give us a higher baseline. Something that you could do for yourself is to help come back from that in moments that feel kind of out of control for you, is to work with something called a yoga nidra. It's a very particular breathing activity. You can Google it. There are lots of stuff about yoga nidra, but there is the one that I like that works really well for me and what I tell my clients to do is to lie flat on the floor, typically on a hard surface is good. I mean, you can have a mat, a yoga mat, or but the bed is also fine. Have your knees bent, so you're on your back, knees are bent, and if you put the timer on for 20 minutes and you do this slow, deep inhale and exhale breathing, what'll happen after 20 minutes is your dopamine baseline will rise at least by 45%. Some of the research shows up to 65%. But that just really motivates you, really energizes you. It's exponentially better than looking on social media to get that dopamine hit. And because it re-energizes you, it puts you back in this state of motivation and engagement. So breathing actually shifts your neurobiology and neurochemical structures tremendously. So you can Google yoga nidra, and nidra is spelled Nidra, and that will show you some videos on YouTube. Again, the best way that I have found is lying flat on your back, knees bent, and relaxing into that. And 20 minutes is like really shifting your whole nervous system significantly. And it even has shown to like have an effect of getting 4 hours of sleep. It's incredible. Okay, let's see if that helped a little bit. Hmm. Yeah, Carrie, absolutely. That is absolutely correct. I worked with a clinical psychologist to build out this course. So a lot of and I interviewed them on my podcast. So a lot of what this course is built around the framework of the 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 framework of the helplessness cycle, the cycle of helplessness. And that clinical psychologist worked mostly with, intimate partner violence, but when we were talking, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what, you know, people, employees in the workplace needs to understand because we're dealing with conflict almost every day and our nervous system. So being able to understand that framework around our nervous systems moving into this place of helplessness or hopelessness or anger, and then needing relief in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. Yeah, thank you, Carrie. Okay. Beautiful, everyone. Thank you so much for showing up and for being part of this today. Big, big hugs. Please connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions and you want to talk through anything else.